Welcome to another Still Stoked chat. I'm here with the formidable, amazing 7-time world champion Layne Beachley.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Alexa.
We're about to do the Q&A, aren't we, for
We are.
Girls Can't Surf?
Indeed we are.
To a full cinema.
I don't think they'll ever be as good as the men, and that's the same in any sport.
I think they just need to look attractive, dress well.
No, they were all such dumbass chauvinistic pigs.
The very first contest we surfed in Hawaii,
The women's check was exactly 50% to the men's.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
It was like all of us girls, everybody that was in our generation was all of a sudden connecting.
that was a pinnacle point where we all started to realise we can do something now.
We were saying to surfing, promote us.
We're not going to stand for less.
They're a force of nature. Without their participation, fighting those fights, there may not be a women's tour.
You know, if you can't see it, you can't be it.
So how has it been with Girls Can't Surf, reliving this entire couple of how many years were you on tour for?
19.
19, almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was quite some time.
Wow.
Yes.
I had no idea it was that long.
Yeah.
How has it been to relive like those early years, I guess?
Yeah, it's been really fun actually, because I'm the eternal optimist. I tend to put all the shit that goes on out of my life and I just focus on all the good things and all the good things to come. And so when we reflect on all those bad times, it took me some time to actually think about what was some of that shit we enjoyed. And then to hear it from the voices of my predecessors, because I was always thanking them for establishing the platform that I was able to benefit from. And to now hear it in their own voices and share their stories on such a impactful way, on such a global scale, but also I really feel this film shines a very positive light on what was a really shitty negative time for women surfing. And fortunately, I think it's a great opportunity for the current and future generations of women surfers to understand what we overcame to ensure that they're the benefactors of today.
And it does it with such humour
Yes.
as well.
Yes, it does.
Which, there's so many emotions that you go through, like you'll cry, you'll laugh out loud.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's a rollicking tale.
Yeah, it's it's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
because
really wonderful.
I think, I love how Wendy's narrative comes through in just true core Wendy, But then, yeah, you really get to see a bit of the struggle that was involved from all of our different angles, and I'm really grateful for how Mickela and Chris were able to piece this together and shine a positive life, and truly believe that it will transcend women surfing. I think it's a very relevant discussion to be having across all industries today.
It's definitely not just a surf film.
No.
You can watch it from any walk of life and find like the intricacies and reflection in it.
Yes.
And how old were you when you first went on tour? You were a little grommet.
17.
17, well not
Yeah.
grommet, but
Well, I
pretty-
was a frothing toe-headed grommet. I was fresh out of high school.
And so were you aware when in your first years like that emotional intelligence to figure out what was happening, like with that tension with the men and the women and the
Not really, because I grew up in a very male-dominated household and then started surfing when I was 4. So I was that was my comfort zone, was being around the guys. And this film has actually given me time to reflect on the conscious biases that I had in my early years. So I prided myself on being a tomboy. My dad called me a tomboy. I prided myself on being one of the boys. I didn't want to make it, I didn't want to make anything of the fact that it was a girl hanging out with a bunch of guys. So when misogynistic or sexist or chauvinistic behaviour occurred, I just laughed with it because it was easier. It was more comfortable just to go along with it than to make something of it. And so now I recognise that I was actually enabling a lot of that behaviour. And it wasn't until I joined the tour did I realise how dysfunctional that all was, and I had to change my behaviour because we set the standards by what we allow, and I was enabling behaviours that weren't congruent with my values. So I really had to step up and start taking a stand on that.
Yeah. And then you took Pam's
spot on the board. Yes.
Yeah. What was that like?
Well, it was horrendous. I mean, I was the only girl in a 14-man room.
Wow.
And they were all, it was one of the most dysfunctional boards I've ever sat on because all the stakeholders sat around the table. So we had the the marketing directors of Billabong, Quicksilver and Rip Curl all sitting there deciding our fate and theirs. And it's good to have input into how a sport is run, especially when you're investing millions of dollars into it. But to then determine prize money increases and rule changes and format structures, and that I don't feel was really truly respected, or the voices of the athletes weren't truly respected around that table, especially a female voice, and especially when they decided to revoke our voice from the table. You know, they basically said, yeah, get your shit together, band up with the guys. You know, the guys have their own union now. Join the men's union and expect them to represent you at the board.
And no option for a women's union, just...
Well, that was, Rochelle really drove that in the early 2000s, you know, because the men had IWS and, or no, it was the WPS, it was World Professional Surfers, and we started IWS, which is International Women Surfers, and just establishing these unions and these organisations to ensure that we have a voice at the table with our governing body. Today just seems ridiculous that we'd have to go through something like that.
Totally.
You know, it just doesn't make sense. But back then it was enforced upon us. And unfortunately, the union that the women created really didn't really survive, because we didn't have the funding, and even when we had created a collaborative voice, it still wasn't respected when we took it to the table.
Yeah, right.
So what was the point?
Yeah. And was it a little bit like, sometimes if you rock the boat, you're scared that you might lose your place? So in those early years, was there a little, some of the group being like, oh, just leave it, it's fine, and then some of you being like, no, it's not fine, let's fight for this?
Yes, and it took a very strong, stoic, resilient woman to stand up into the face of that. And at times it was me, at times it was Rochelle, at times it was Pam, at times it was Kate Scarrett. You know, there was a select few of us that took on the political world of professional surfing governance, and but then we had to respect the relationships that we had with our individual sponsors. So if we ever rocked the boat at governance or governing level, we were essentially rocking our own personal boats at sponsorship level. So we had to learn how to play that, and I rocked the boat several times with my sponsor. I mean, Billabong, you know, they gave me a couple of cracks across the knuckles for different things. You know, one was I spoke out about how they are more supportive of the male surfers as far as promotion and, of course, endorsement levels. But I wanted, what did I want? I complained about something because I was writing articles in the Australian every week or every month. I had my own little column in the Australian newspaper, and I bitched about...
Did they love that, or were they like, oh, what you going to say
well,
this
yeah,
time?
well, because I was referred to as a loose cannon because they couldn't control me and I would speak my mind.
Yeah.
And so I bitched about the fact that they wouldn't fund making a video, a surf movie about me. They'd only do it about the guys. And so I got pulled in and asked to apologise for saying such things, with the threats of being dropped. Yeah. So yeah, you had to walk a very fine line and play a very political game.
Yeah. And now Jessie Miley-Dyer just took that top role in the WSL.
The head commissioner.
Yeah, which is amazing.
It's amazing, yeah, because Jessie took my seat at the table. And she comes from a very political background. You know, she comes from a Labor family, of trade union.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, she loves it. You know, she's all about equality, and she has the intelligence. You know, she's got the legal background. She's got the intelligence to stand up and fight for what she believes in, and doesn't take no for an answer. So for the guys who are battling with her in the boardroom, they know they're going to have a fight on their hands.
Yeah, it's just so good, you know, that's been implemented.
It's great, and she also has the respect of the athletes. So the athletes know that she has their best interests at heart because she's been one.
Yeah,
she knows what she's up against, and she does it in a respectful way, but also a very strong, manner.
So 19 years on tour, from one athlete to another, that must have been absolutely exhausting.
Yes, it was.
And
much like the surf I had today.
And how was being a young woman, 19 years on tour, traveling all the time, how was that personally to maintain relationships and grueling? Like, what was that like?
Well, the first few years were extremely grueling because when I joined the tour, there was no tour managers, there was no set structure of supports to say, okay, here's the events, here are the places to stay, this is how you get there, these are the airlines that you need to look at. There was nothing.
Yeah, off you go.
It was just,
no internet, no phone.
Nothing.
Off you go. Yeah.
Nothing like that. So
Jodie had some funny stories that she shared with us.
Oh, did she?
Being in LA and like finding someone's open car and sleeping in because her mum gave her a phone number of someone to stay with in LA.
Oh wow!
She was like,
yeah,
had crazy stories of
we've all got we've all got those stories. I mean, I said to my dad. So, the first time I went to California was the year after I finished high school. No, actually, well, the first time I went on my own. So my dad dropped me in California at Huntington Beach, at a friend's house, Bill and Joy, I think their names were, and he went off to San Francisco with his wife and went to a wedding. And I was left there, and so Bill took me down to Huntington Beach because he knew I was a surfer, and we went to George's surf shop on Main Street there, and I wanted to rent a board and a wetsuit. And I met the guy behind the counter. He was a South African guy called Kevin.
You've got a great memory.
And Kevin took a liking to me and decided to come surfing with me, and I told him that I was planning to come back the following year in 1990 to compete in the OP Pro. And he's like, oh, unreal, you can stay with me. I went, oh, fantastic, awesome, thanks, I'd love to. So I kept Kevin's number and I called him a couple of months later, and I said, oh, I'm coming there, I'm going to be landing at this time, are you happy to pick me up? He's like, yeah, I'll come pick you up for sure. And he came and picked me up from the airport, and my first, solo travel internationally to a really big city, he drove me down to Huntington, and he was living on the corner of 6th and Orange in this classic little A-frame house with his cousin Vaughan and Vaughan's other cousin Barry and his wife Kerry, and then another guy called Peter, in this 3-bedroom A-frame house. And what I didn't realise is that Kevin expected me to stay with him. Like, he expected me to sleep with him.
Oh no.
And I got into this house just going, hang on, I'm still a virgin and I certainly don't want to sleep with you, you crazy bastard.
Oh no.
So he made me pay for that. Oh. So it was all great until I got to the house, and then it got very sour very quickly. Oh. So I literally slept on the couch in the lounge room for a month. And Kevin, to make my life even more difficult, would smoke bongs in the lounge room and just stay up late, just so I just had to be awake. And then I competed, I made the main event, and I got smoked by Frida Zamba in the first round. But I won enough prize money. I think I won $1,000, and I won enough prize money to be able to stay there for an extra couple of weeks, and then came home and then had to work for the next 3.5 months to get the prize money, or get enough money to then go to Hawaii. And my first trip to Hawaii, I flew over there with Nerida Falconer, who I'd met obviously competing at a couple of events. And Nerida and I we flew into Honolulu. You would land at midnight or 1 a.m. We slept in the terminal until 6 or 7. And then Nerida was a year or two older than me, so she had the age to where she could go into Honolulu and rent a car. Yeah. But there was very few. It was a real dodgy car dealership that would rent a 20-year-old. Yeah, she must have been 20. She wasn't 21 yet. Anyway, we drove to the North Shore. We drove the wrong way. We went around the H3 instead of the H1 to the H2. We ended up pissing a whole lot of people off because we kept to the left and we're supposed to stay to the right. And to the left, there's these cars that kept going around us, and they had purple flags on their aerials. And we're like, what is this? And then we realised it was a funeral procession. Oh no! And we just kept breaking it up because we didn't. Oh. We got.
So how old were you?
I'm 18.
18.
And we got to the North Shore, and we just heard of people like Ken Bradshaw that would have places to stay, but of course it's the peak season. It's
still
winter.
Back then it was still
nobody had anywhere to stay, and it's actually where I met Nancy Emerson, because Nancy was staying in this little house at the back of Pipeline. It was about a 800-meter walk up this dirt track, and it was a La Nina year, it was a La Nina year, so it was super wet. It rained the whole time. And we could only afford to have the car for a few days, so we drove it back to Honolulu. We found this little house, this little duplex that they were renting rooms to boogie boarders. Anyway, there was boogie boarders and surfers and chicks and all sorts of people there, and they had no room left, but there was a little caravan out the front of the place. And Nerida and I slept in that caravan for several weeks together with no running water and no electricity, and it was $10 a night each. And then we would walk to the end of the dirt road and then hitchhike from Pipe to Sunset every day to surf and compete.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great.
Those were the years.
Oh, those were the days.
You sound. When you look back on it, you're like, God, it's amazing that you're still alive. Like, that's what the girls are saying. Like, you look back on this movie's made them like think back and like of all the things that they did. And, like, God, I'm still lucky I'm still here.
How did we succeed despite all that?
And what's funny now, like, you got the team managers and everyone's kind of a bit mollycoddled.
Yes.
A little bit.
Well, they're very well supported, shall we say?
And,
yes.
and
they're well nurtured.
Well nurtured, and they definitely wouldn't be being put on a plane with a phone number in their back pocket and said, go and find.
Well, and I wasn't paid to do this. I had to generate the funds, and then the girls that I were friends with, they didn't want to help me either.
Yeah.
So that's why I was really keen to connect with somebody who was willing to mentor me and help soften the blow of this culture shock of joining a pro tour that had no value, no respect, no compassion or empathy. It was just a bitchy, uncomfortable place for an 18-year-old to just show up and go hi and expect people to be supportive.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much
Who were
of that.
your mentors on tour?
So
Who did you look up to?
Pam, Wendy, and Pauline, I'd say were they were my three strongest mentors.
Nice.
And Lisa for a little while, but then when I became a threat, then Lisa and I started to have a real rivalry that was quite strong.
Yeah, yours is one of the the famous. You've got Kelly and Andy, and then you and
me and
Lisa.
Yeah.
You know what? I took Sonny Garcia snowboarding last year before his incident.
Yeah.
And because I worked as a mountain guide in Japan, and when I said I lived in Freshie, and I said that I surf with you a fair bit in the morning, I see you around, and he's like, oh, Layne, we used to draw straws whenever there was a mixed sex heat. Yeah. And he said we used to draw straws because no one wanted to surf against you. You were ruthless. And he was like, literally, like, she was so good at competing. And he
really
had so much respect for you.
Aww, I love Sonny.
Yeah, we had a really good day that day, and he just had his eyes lit up when I said
really?
that.
Yeah. Well, I did beat a few guys out at Sunset many a time.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Was he one of them?
Yeah. And I've got a dent in my forehead thanks to Sonny, actually, because he called me onto a set at 10 foot. It was 10 to 12 foot at Sunset with howling offshore winds, and he's like, go, Layne. And when Sonny Garcia tells you to go, you have to go. And I went and I missed it, and I turned around and there was a bigger one behind it, and it caught me inside, and my board hit me in the head and almost knocked me out.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So I love Sonny.
He's a legend. It was really fun to watch him snowboard as well.
I bet.
He had an absolute blast.
He always said it takes a lot to slow this booty down. Yeah. Because he's a big stocky man.
You know what? He was scared of the trees. Bless him. We were like, how do you do 100-foot bloody waves and you're scared of the trees?
It's all relative.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we could keep chatting for ages.
We could. We already have. But we've got to go do a Q&A.
Do the Q&A.
Yes.
So we can continue more chats.
Yes.
In there.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alexa. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Awesome.
Yay. Thank you.
No worries. Short and sweet.